Aaron. He's the best.
All right, here we are.
Go, go.
Adepticon Showdown, Episode 3, or whatever you want to call it.
Hey, everybody.
We're moving and grooving. Can everyone hear us
Episode
okay?
3 is always the best one, right, Aaron?
What's that?
Episode 3 is always the best.
Yeah, Episode 3 is. Well, in certain genres. Rock and roll. Also, I switched mics, so hopefully my mic is louder this time. Who knows? I don't know why my other mic's super good. It just doesn't want to be loud. So, but only in the stream. Like you guys can hear me fine, I think.
Yeah, coming through loud and clear.
Cool beans. So, what have you guys been up to? You finished anything off, Anthony?
Working on Psylocke still. It's been I've been trying to figure out how to paint like the Sentinel boot, which is blue, and she's blue, so it's a little tricky to get.
Always tricky, yeah. Get those things to show up without, or be different without being different, type of thing. So I think a lot of times that's like a cool, warm thing, or especially if they're very close on the tonal range or whatever. You run the risk of it just being the exact same color. Especially if there's nothing to like block between the two colors or whatever.
She's like standing on top of like the little boot, and they're both. Okay. I'll have to put her on and see what it looks like.
Yeah.
Maybe tonight we'll see.
Cool beans. So, how's everyone doing out there in the audience land? Is there any? We got Liz kind of moderating for us a little bit. So hopefully.
It says, "Welcome, gentlemen."
Hello. Cool beans. So this show is going to be a little bit different than we've done the other shows because we're just trying to mix it up a little bit and plus have a little community involvement. So we're going to be doing a sort of a community roundup where we picked some cool paint jobs that we liked that the community people are doing, like maybe on Instagram or mostly Facebook because the photos were bigger to save. But and we're just going to check them out and just
these nuts.
And check out these nuts.
Got him.
Oh gosh. Someone subscribed. Thank you. Anyways, that always cracks me up. So we're going to be checking out, celebrating some community paint jobs. There's some really cool stuff this time around. So maybe that will give people some inspiration to keep on rocking out cool paint jobs and posting them and stuff. Because it's always fun to look at that. And then we've also got Anthony, you had posted something, I think, or maybe somebody else had posted in the MCP Facebook group, and then you commented on it, that Sean Sarah. He had done the N&M, and he was just asking for tips or whatever, and you're like, hey, we should do this on the next show. And so I asked him, I was like, I'm not just going to grab his photos, and we're like, critique away, But I asked him, and he was like, oh, heck yeah, let's do this. So even if he's not in the chat tonight, he'll definitely see it eventually. So we're going to have Matt do that a little bit later in the show, so stick around for that. It'll be super cool. But anyways, it's Iron Man, and, just kind of getting, he got a good start on it, but there's a lot of things he could do to just really make it look like shiny metal or whatever. So, and Iron Man's so cool.
I'm gonna kind of give my take, kind of a simplified take on painting non-metallic metals because that's what he was asking about. And of course, Iron Man's all shiny metal, but colored metal as well. So we're going to load this pose up in Photoshop, and then I'll be able to sort of paint over it in Photoshop, kind of talking about, what's working, what isn't working, and kind of the theory behind how to tackle a really challenging paint job like that. And I think everybody can learn something from that. And, hopefully Sean can take that and, make the changes or apply them to the next piece or whatever. So I'm not sure how long it will take, but I end up doing this a lot with my students that I teach online. So people people can kind of get a little bit of a window into what taking classes online is like as well. So.
Yeah, me and Anthony. The only thing that'll be different is Sean's not here to talk to you. Ask questions. But
Yeah,
maybe
that's
me and
true.
Anthony can pretend like we're Sean, and we'll ask questions.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm sure that you guys have like a different take on how you would teach the subject and everything.
I mean, everybody does, and that's the brilliance of it. Everyone has their own flavor or like style. I don't know, like what you like. You paint the way you like, usually, and so it'll be cool to see how your take on it. And maybe in the future we'll each do a different one or something or whatever. We'll get Anthony well versed on his Photoshop skills or whatever, and or whatever, or it'll just be me and Matt. Like we do this all the time, so it should be pretty.
But I mean, I think it's always good to see other people's processes, and there's always something you can learn from. You can always learn from each other, So that is what Matt does.
Exactly. And I'm like, even when I do private coaching and stuff, I'm like, just remember, this is my opinion. That's it. Like, you don't have to do anything I say, but you should. No. But yeah, because there's just like, there's a lot of different ways of, skinning a cat. And you just gotta, if you see a few different ways of doing something, maybe you have a better idea in your head of what you want to get out of your head. So should be pretty cool. Well, that being said, I'm the painter this week, and I'm super nervous because I already had 2 fantastic painters do 2 months in a row. But what we haven't done is any airbrushing, and so I'm gonna be working on. Let me switch this over. I'm gonna be working on this model, and he's big, so this is gonna not go quickly. But I want it to go quickly. So I've kind of already started with the Zenithal Prime. It was just black and white, and then I was talking with. Our good friend Bryce Coconor, he's working on a Golden Demon project, and he needed to have like a yellow light from above, and he didn't know how to do that. So I sprayed some yellow just in this pocket right here. Can you see that? Like you can kind of tell that it's warmer.
It's a little bit.
It's not super. It's better on my high def screen.
Yeah,
it's a little bit better.
It looks like it's been peed on.
Yeah, it looks like it's been peed on a little bit. But what I also think is it's brighter in this pocket than it is like maybe over here. Like this is definitely white and this is getting yellowish white. So anyways, that's my thought there. And I thought once I start airbrushing over this, maybe some of that yellow will show through. I know Matt, you do a lot of that where you pre-paint like even like yellows in your highlights or whatever, and then paint over that just to get something showing through. So yeah, and then I also want to push in some sort of like kicker colors, like some different colors into the shadows before I even get started. So we're going to do that.
Hey, Aaron, before you start, I do want to say that Mr. Ben, top contributor on the MCP Facebook.
Literally the top contributor I saw.
Top contributor.
Yeah.
Cheat Cat as well, too. So thanks for joining. But Aaron, can you tell us about how you prep and do your priming, your Zenithal priming?
Good question. And I, part of me was like, I should paint this black again. Let's see. Did I get rid of a model? Do I have a model?
Yeah, it is a pretty important part of the process.
Yeah.
And it isn't always talked about. Like, I very rarely start with just a Zenithal priming, but I usually try to like have a dramatic light source as well.
Right.
So I don't know what your takes on that are as well, but I think that there's probably somebody in the chat or watching this later who doesn't know how that's applied. So
yeah. So here's my thought on the priming. Priming is twofold. Part of it is to set up my lighting. So if you see, and I'm just gonna I have this model on my desk. It's obviously not MCP, but so if you see on this model, I've obviously got shadows and highlights, and then clearly my light source is coming from this direction right here, which is a good idea because he's running this way. You put the light source back there, it looks kind of dumb. Like light behind it is not the way you want to go unless you want really ultra dramatic light sourcing. But he's got this cool, like it's like a power forward or something. It's like that's the money shot right there. So if you can see on the back side, it's very, very dark on this side, very, very light on this side. So I'm setting up my lighting to be in that direction. Pretty simple, right? But I'm also making sure that other areas, like say the feet, are going to be red too. So they need a little bit brighter color. If it's just mostly black, like I have this really, really dark color down there, my red, I'll have to build up a lot more to get the brightness of the red I want. So I can always knock my reds back down afterwards. So I try to not only put a light source in, but also make areas brighter. Like let's say on a model like, gosh, the one question that just stumps me right now. So let's say I'm doing this guy, right? So let's say his pants are going to be bright yellow. For some reason, he just loves bright yellow pants. I would have made the pants a lot brighter white. So it would actually look like my light source was lower down here, just so I could get really bright yellow pants. And then the rest of the model might be just that regular, my zenithal prime or whatever. So I kind of mix it up depending on how I want the paint job to be, So this guy right here is just black, and I'm gonna grab some white. I just use Stynylrez. There's lots of different primers out there. All right, so we got this. Also, just so everyone knows, I can't see the chat at all. So, actually, you know what? I probably could. Hold on a second.
Yeah, I can see it. I can.
Well, no, I had to have your screen up that has you two guys for the other screen, but now we're good to go. Okay, so somebody subscribed. Pickled Peach subscribed. Oh, thanks, babe. Okay, so when I know.
Oh.
So when I'm doing my zenithal prime, let's see here. So So I usually come in at about 45 degrees all the way around, and I'll just do a light back and forth. And if you notice, I do like a pendulum, right? You can do this with a primer can too. It's just not as controlled as this. So going back and forth, I'll go all the way around the model. So right now, it's just strictly zenithal prime. There's no like force lighting or anything. And what I do what I call a 10% spray. Is basically, if you look at my palette right here, it's super, super light as opposed to white. So this is like, almost looks like a dark gray or medium gray, and then that would be full on white. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just putting on small layers back and forth, and usually I just speckled, but it shouldn't do that. Usually it builds up very, very quickly. So let's go back and forth on both sides.
Speckling.
There's a speckle right there, and basically I sprayed harder. So here's a little tip. So if you spray really light sprays like this, little 10% sprays, then when you spray again, it won't speckle. But if you do this, so hold on, it's just more speckly, and that's hard to see too. But like I can see it on the model.
Is it just it sprays speckled when you open up again?
So what I think it is when you spray for a long period of time, or you spray really heavy, more paint gets on the tip of the needle, and then it's still wet. So when you go to spray again, it just speckles it off. It just throws it off, and it creates that speckle. But if you do a 10% spray, if you just do a really light spray like that, there's nothing left on the needle. So when I do my 10% sprays going back and forth like this, I tend to not have any speckles at all, ever. So it works out. Like on this, it doesn't matter because we're going to cover this up with paint. So it doesn't matter if it's speckly. But if this was the final color and I've got these big dots of whatever color I'm spraying, that would kind of be a bummer. So then once I get that, I'm trying to stay at 45 degrees. I might come in low because like, look, this guy has like a little pouch down here or something, or it's his fur. So I might have to come in at a lower angle just to hit that, but I'm going to do it real lightly. Okay, so if I spray too heavy from down here, now I'm erasing all my shadows. Like I'm trying to keep those shadows built in by the angle of my airbrush. So now when I go again, and with, especially with white primer, you want to do like hard sprays a lot. And a hard spray is just like all air, all paint. And you do a couple of those, and then you do what I call a soft spray and just kind of spray the speckles off. But that will keep it from dry tipping. Or to an extent, you still got to clean your tip off every once in a while. But so now on my second go round, I'm going to be a little bit more specific. Like on this, I usually have my lighting whichever way the head's turned, or sometimes the head's turned the other way. But there's like he's got a cool gun or something that you want the focal point to be on. So whichever way you want the focus to be on that model, that's the way I spray the rest of my light basically. So in this case, I'll come back in and I'm concentrating more like on the head. Maybe the top of these shoulders. You see how that's brighter now, but it stayed really dark down here. Darker on the hands. Maybe I want the tail to be a little bit lighter. Just to show up. I can also, so let's say this rock is going to be glowing green or something. So I know that like right now my light's tapering off and getting over here. It should only be like maybe that bright at the end of the day. But since I know that I want this to be a really, really bright, vibrant color at the end, I'm going to come in and really hit it harder. And I've done this for so many years, I'm pretty good with my control. Trying not to hit the fingers, but it really doesn't matter because some of that glow is going to come off on the fingers too. So you see, I can just start making that rock. It's not following my zenithal prime at all. It's got its own light situation going now. Something like that. Okay, now I want to come back in. You got to drop the model too because that's how you know you're going to get a good score from the judges. Right, Anthony? How many times do you drop your contest models?
Yeah, at least
all the time.
3 times. You know, you gotta make sure that when you drop it, it gets damaged all around.
It's not a real drop unless something breaks off of it, though, Aaron.
Oh, believe me, I went to a Gen Con one time and I was leaving I needed to glue one piece back on. And I was getting ready to leave that morning to go to Gen Con, and it was back to the last one that was in LA. And I dropped the model. I just literally dropped it. And the whole thing broke. Like every piece that could break off of this model broke off, and I didn't have any more glue. And so I literally went to my friend's house and I was almost in tears. I just had a handful of parts and I was like, please tell me you got glue. I got second place.
Classic.
So see, it works. You got to bust them to make them good, you know?
You know, I was doing lock and load one year and I dropped my Chromac figure and his arm broke off and I had to resculpt his arm with putty.
Oh no. It was
putty.
that kind of break. Dang.
And I want a gold, so hey, you know.
That's a
it works.
bummer. So now you can kind of see, like, I've got really good, you call it lighting. I've got a good start to what I want to do. And, you know, if I want to say, you know, let's say for another weird example, he stepped in whatever green glowing stuff is on this. He stepped in some that was on the ground. So I know that his foot's going to be super bright. So in that case, so this is just an example of I'm painting certain parts of this model and I'm not following my zenithal prime at all. I'm following the fact that it's going to be really, really bright green foot, you know. So that would be the only difference. Now, a good way to ruin this would be, I see this all the time in my classes, people come back in, they've got their white primer and they start spraying from this angle. and they wreck all of those shadows and stuff that were kind of already put there. So it's not it's not like this is the end look of the whole model, because you might put shadows up high, like maybe this fur has some deep cuts in it and you want it to be darker. Well, the airbrush kind of gets rid of that, right? So you're going to want to have to put that back in by hand later. But it at least gets you to this point and it looks pretty cool. So that being said, that's how this guy looks. He's got that.
Yeah. It's hard to spray shadows back in once you lose them.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, it's different. Let's put it that way. I mean, you can do it, but it definitely takes a different sort of skill set. And also, you got to remember that, like, I'm gonna spray some shadows on this, and they're gonna go over the dark areas, so they're just gonna get darker, but colored. If I put it over the light area, it's gonna be much lighter shadow, so it's not really gonna look like the shadow anymore. So it definitely, yeah, you got a problem there. Unless that's what you're looking for. I find that sometimes I do that just to get more tones in the piece. So maybe we'll try that on this. I don't know how I'm going to paint this yet, so we'll just figure it out as we go. I do know it needs to be quick, though. So maybe we'll get there. So now we've had our demo on a Shadows of Brimstone model. I paint for both companies, though, so it's okay. All right. And this is how I clean out my airbrush. I just spray in the cup till it starts running kind of clean. It's never going to be completely clean. And I just watch that spray. If it's nice, forceful spray, I know that it's fairly clean. It should be pretty clean. I just airbrushed one model. Hopefully it's not dirty after that, but you never know. Sometimes it just gets clogged quick. But that's how I check if I'm clogging, is with each color change I can see if, what color do I want here? I can see if the flow of air is impeded. If it is, I know that I need to clean it a little bit better. So we'll do that. So I want a really dark, so this guy's going to be red. Ooh. And what's the complement of, this guy's going to be warm red. Let me specify it that way. So what's the complement of warm red?
Green.
Like a tealy. Actually, it's a bluish teal. If you look right across on the color wheel, or at least the real color wheel. So it should. So what I want, I'm using Payne's gray and a little bit of teal to get a really, really dark tealish blue gray. Maybe a little bit of black too. It's kind of like, coal black. That color. Except we can't get coal black.
Coal black.
Yeah, they're coming out again. They got that Kickstarter going. It's actually doing pretty good.
Oh yeah, from
Steamforge. Right? Yep.
Yeah.
That was the first thing I looked for. I'm like, are they making sanguine base and coal black again? Because that's the most important two colors.
Good colors.
Yeah, I like them. Okay. So the other thing, I don't want this to be a base coat. I want it to be more of a glazy base coat.
Male white highlight. That was that one.
Yeah, that's a good color too. The Thamar black was good too. Like, it went down solid. Like, not all blacks do that.
I know that paint set like the back of my hand.
Oh, why? Why is that, Matt?
It's like 10 years worth of
So
painting
weird.
only with us.
Hey Aaron, can you I'm always very lazy and I mix my paint directly into the airbrush cup.
Mhm.
So
And then you have all the clogs and stuff.
why is that bad? I
You can do it. I mean, I see people do it all the time. But so I paint a lot or I do a lot of airbrushing, and I really like not clogging. And you start cleaning, like doing it in the cup. The only time I really do it in the cup is if I'm doing a really thinned out glaze. But otherwise, like, it seems like it clogs all the time. So I don't like to clog, so I don't mind doing it in the cup. I don't save the paint either afterwards. I just spray it out, keep going.
Like, what can happen is that little tiny grains, like especially if you're using dropper bottles, there'll be like little tiny grains that get stuck in the dropper bottle. And if any of that gets into your cup, it will clog. Period.
Yeah, because your
You know,
needle nozzle is so tiny.
it can be like a tiny little speck of dry paint, and
Yeah.
you're just
And you're done.
screwed.
It's
That's
over.
why, yeah, yeah, it's done. You gotta just clean it all out. So it's just better to kind of.
So here's the other thing: is sometimes even brand new paint, the pigment is not completely mixed up in it, and so you'll have like chunks of pigment in a brand new bottle. And so if you didn't mix it really, really well, which in the cup you really can't tell at all. I mean, you kind of can't tell anyways, but at least in a salsa cup, I can beat the crap out of that. Make sure, if it makes it through that mixing, then I know that it was a really big clog.
So Iron Man's like red though, so why are you spraying blue, green, blackish colors on it?
So this is the complement of that red. Also, blue just looks good in almost everything because it's like a recessive color. So it has a tendency to go look further away and darker. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
If you don't mind, I could, kind of
give
explain
the
it a little
total
bit.
technical.
Because you're like doing two things at once. But basically, you're probably gonna go use sort of transparent colors so that the layers underneath will show through the layer you're putting on top, right?
Right. Yeah, to an extent. Yeah.
Yeah, to an extent. And so what happens is if you have a complementary color underneath another color, it will desaturate that color. It will make it less vibrant and also sort of darker. They kind of mix together almost like optically. So it's like a really it's a really nice and pleasant and artistic way to make your shadows more interesting. So you use the complementary color underneath the main color, the mass tone that you're going to use.
Yeah, it's the underpainting or what, I don't know.
Yeah.
There's technical terms for it. I don't care. It just makes it look cool.
Yeah, it's like the paint. Yeah, the painting that goes on underneath. So that's kind of how it works. You also, if you're trying to do an underpainting that's like color of light or something like that, you have to be really aware of this color interaction because your colors might get muddy when you don't want them to. You might end up with green instead of yellow. So. You gotta be aware of these color interactions. But if you are aware of it and you understand how it works, or if you just get a subconscious feel for it,
it helps.
You
so
can
much.
really make some amazing effects. So yeah, that's what's happening.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna push this a little bit with teal.
So Aaron, you're like mixing directly into the.
Yeah, I'm doing what I told you not to do, Anthony, because I'm trying to be just like you. No, so I'm just going to show you how quick this clogs. No, I'm just kidding. Also, I only needed to do a little of this, so I got lazy. So there's the lazy factor too, and but if I was doing 10 of these, like let's say I was doing the terrain for Adepticon, they're like, we need 20 of these just to be on the table. I'm mixing in the cup because I don't want to clog after the second model. Just no bueno, right? So, yeah.
So this is more of the complementary.
Yeah, bluish teal. And so just to be straight, green is a complement for red. It's just the tonal range of red from orangey red to magenta-y red is really far. And if you look at the real color wheel online, and I learned this from Jeremy Bonamont, so I'm not completely crazy, but it like the color wheel, it's not just like here's the red, here's the orange, here's the yellow. It's like all the shades in between. And you actually see that in the warm red shades, it's actually going towards the bluish teal on the other side. And if you mix bluish teal into warm red, you get a gray, which is what happens when you mix a complement color. It grays out rather than getting muddy.
If it's perfectly on the opposite side, it will turn gray instead of brown.
So that's a great way to just test if you've got a good complement. If the color is more gray than just muddy, you probably got the right color. But then that would mean you'd have to test a little bit, and that's no fun.
Well, like teal is very close to green. It basically is like on the cusp.
It is. I mean, we're it's kind of like semantics. But I did notice, like, back in the day when I was just painting with like GW paints and stuff, you know, people would say put green in your red cape, you know, as a compliment, and I would always do it, and it would always turn to like brown or like this ugly color, and I was just like, the compliment's not working. I don't understand. But then when I realized that there is a gamut of that, and if you start going over into the bluish greens, it actually started looking better. And so, anyways, that's just something, an observation I kind of found on my own.
And there's other times where you want to not use the exact, you know, opposite because you want it to turn more brownish.
Exactly. So now you're like actually just manipulating the colors to do whatever you want them to do.
Yeah, especially when you're painting skin tones and you're using like the Verdaccio method, for example.
Yeah.
Or you're using red and green in the skin tone.
If you guys want to see this in
use
action, Matt, like
more.
pretty much every one of Matt's videos are on Miniature Monthly have some form of this in them.
Yeah, we talk about it a lot. Anyway, I shouldn't get off topic.
No, it's super fascinating because it's just like one of those things where, like, you know, you're like, this isn't working, but this works. You know, it's kind of like, I guess you just gotta try things, right, and see what happens. Because sometimes maybe I put teal into a color and then it doesn't look good. I'm like, well, it should work, but it didn't. You know?
But once you're aware of it, you can actually look for it in pieces of art. So if you see one that like is really doing something you like, you'd be like, oh, what's he doing with the underpainting? You can and try to like reverse engineer it because you can see the signs of what it is. So you'd be like, oh man, he's doing this or that, and then I'm gonna try that in my next piece. Right?
This guy took one of my private coaching. He took like one. And then he contacted me like a month or two later, and he basically broke down almost all of my paint, like the newer paint jobs. Obviously, the really old ones, I wasn't doing this yet, but all the newer ones. And he goes, okay, I see the colors. And he called out all the colors that I'd used. And I was like, holy crap. He did a good job.
It's a bond.
Yeah. He had all my tricks. I was like, damn it. No wonder you only took one private coaching. But sometimes that's all it takes, man. You know, just getting that little bump.
You're just that good of a teacher, Aaron.
I don't know. I just talk a lot. I talk till they're like, oh, okay, I can't take anymore. Okay, so we've got that. So I'm doing a lot of experiments tonight. So I took the Byron dry brushing class at Nova Open, or I didn't take his class. I just stopped by the booth, and he gave me a personal class, which was awesome. And so, like, I've seen his stuff, and like, you know. So, anyways, I want to try that out on this because I am going to be using see-through colors, maybe some inks, and also like some contrasty type colors to put my red on. And then if that looks horrible, I've got regular red. But either way, I want stuff to show through. But I think if I do like a light dry brushing to kind of pick out all the edge highlights in areas, it'll look pretty cool with the colors over it, right? So I'm gonna go with a pale yellow. Maybe pale yellow where it's yellowy, and then white where it's not pale yellow. So maybe I should start with white, huh? I don't think it really matters, but turn that compressor off for a second. So yeah, if you haven't done one of Byron's little demos at a con, you really should. Actually, hey Liz, could you give me a new glass of water? This one's like super dirty.
To drink or to?
Actually, I've got water. Hold on, I can do this on my own.
Yeah, his dry brushes
You're
have
supposed to
super a
drink
lot
that.
of like hairs in it, so they're pretty intense. But so are you gonna use the dry brush to do the red instead of
No, I'm gonna do a quick highlight on this, and then I'm putting red over it. Now, I'll probably have to do final highlights again, But so this is. I mean, it's not really a secret because Byron teaches us at every single con he goes to, and he has a. You can just go to his booth and see it, but let's see. Of course, I have white that doesn't come out. Oh lordy, yeah. This is the one color that's actually pretty thick from Monument. They're bold titanium white. All right, this will work. Make my little line over there. Anyways, the whole premise to this is putting on a very light dry brush layer that's a little bit wet, and then it doesn't look so dry brushy. But I haven't practiced this a whole lot, so it might be horrible. We don't know. But the goal here is to go fast so I can finish this model relatively quickly. So I put a little bit of water in here, like just a little bit. And actually, Byron was really feisty about how damp the sponge was. Like he was trying to get most of any water out, and then he would put his brush on, and it's just barely damp. Again, I'm working off of one demo at a convention, so I'm not the best at this.
Have you used it in your normal painting?
What's that? Yeah.
Have you used it already? Okay.
I've actually used it on box arts.
Oh yeah, nice.
Yeah. But the key is, just like airbrushing, you don't want it to look like it's airbrushing at the end. So you don't want it to look like dry brushing at the end. So this is just supposed to be like super, super light. And I'm just trying to, let me see if I can get a little closer. This is going to be one of those episodes where the camera goes in and out a million times because airbrushing needs it further away.
Mm-hmm. How do you avoid getting some like texture on the figure with the airbrushing?
Because the brush is wet.
Yeah, you make it a little bit damp.
A little bit damp. Mm-hmm.
So it's
That's
still
really important.
Yeah, it's super important. Also, I'm not super worried if a little scratch comes across. It'll be okay. Let me see. Okay, there's not enough contrast in here to actually focus there, but. So my goal here is to just get, and I'm only dry brushing in a downward way, because I want to kind of just hopefully pick out a couple of these edges. And sometimes if it does go over onto the flat area a little bit, I just keep hitting it, and because it's a little bit wet, it just sort of rubs itself away.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't forget to put more water on.
Now, what's
Because
the difference? Why would you do this method versus airbrushing it?
Because I can't get those edge highlights with the airbrush.
Mm-hmm.
I know I've heard guys be like, oh, I can dot an eye and I can do all this stuff, and I'm like, I've never actually seen that. So you see I messed up right there a little bit. I can just come back in, knocked most of that paint off. And again, all of this is going to get covered over with red. So I'm not super worried about, if I was doing this on the final paint job, I would really, really make sure that my brush was perfect before I started going on the model. Some of this is just like glazing. Sometimes you don't really see anything happen and you just have to have faith that you're doing the right thing. The other thing is, if you know you're doing it right, if even during the middle of your dry brushing, your brush should always be soft. Even though there's paint in there, it's always soft. If it starts getting all clumpy like a normal dry brush, you're doing it wrong. That was probably the best thing that Byron showed me, because it's really easy to, you can now judge how the health of your brush or the wetness of your brush just by checking if it's still soft.
And that's because the brush gets clumpy because it's too much paint, or it's too
because
dry?
the paint's literally drying in the brush, and it's just starting to fill the brush up with paint. So Byron showed me his dry brush that was like 6 months old, and it was about 1/8 of an inch was gone off the top of it because he just dry brushed so many times, but it was perfectly smooth, like perfectly soft. It was like he never used it. And these ones I've been using quite a bit with darker colors, and you see they're still, like, they clean off perfectly. So before I forget, do we have any other questions out in the peanut gallery?
Not right now.
Not right now, okay. Perfect.
Just questions about the real color wheel. I'm trying to get a photo of it.
Yeah, just type in real color wheel.
No, I posted it in the chat.
You did? Okay, it's in the chat. That was the first painting class I ever took, was with Jeremy Bonamont, and that's the color wheel he had.
Was it in LA?
It was in San Diego. I actually hosted it. I was that guy for a while.
You're what?
I hosted the first Jeremy Bonamont class in San Diego. Actually, I
hosted
hosted
him
3
in
of them.
Seattle, actually, back in
yeah.
the day. He was the first one that kind of came over from Europe and was doing sort of the circuit.
Yep. He had no competition.
He's a fun character, that guy.
He's hilarious. Did you have him when he had the didgeridoo?
Oh yeah, he brought his didgeridoo.
Oh
for
my
sure.
gosh, that was hilarious, man. He would go into a restaurant and just start playing it. If you've never heard a didgeridoo, it makes a very unusual sound. It's like a hollow sound. So I can't even describe it. It's like,
yeah, you use circular breathing, so you can like just play it forever.
Forever, yes.
Is that the Australian thing that sounds like a wah wah?
Yeah.
Yep, that's it. Alright, so I'm going to switch. So I had a little mess up on the last set of color because I had too much water in the sponge, so that put too much water in my paintbrush. But it fixed itself really quick, so it's not like... Now, if you like dunk your brush in water, you're done. Like, it's going to take a long time to get all that out, but... Alright, so we'll do this. A little bit more yellowy color up here in the top. Now, I guess I should also say I've never actually done this. I've done something similar with just painting in highlights and stuff, but I haven't done the dry brushing thing. But I thought since it's such a big model, it would be way better or way quicker this way.
How are you liking it so far?
Well, we'll see if it works. Once the paint goes on, maybe it will just erase them completely. Like it is like with the dry brush, you get really fine highlights, you know.
So speaking of large models, if you had the choice between a model that was large or something that had just tons of little details everywhere, large and simple or smaller but like just tons of things hanging off of it, which one do you prefer?
So sometimes large and simple is harder because you have big flat areas that gotta stay good, you know. I like when things are like these legs right here are kind of busy right in between the leg sections. I kind of like that because I can mess up a lot more and it still looks okay.
Interesting.
But like so for a high-end model, I would rather have the small detailed one. But for like an army and gaming where I'm not putting as much detail in, I take the big easy one all day because I can literally almost dry brush everything. Okay, see, it's starting to give.
I like big, simpler things, even for high-end stuff.
Yeah, I like that too because I think I can like interpret it my way, I guess, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or draw some like draw some stuff on it. Like
Yeah, sometimes they're just too busy. I feel you there too. But if I'm trying to save time, I feel like and do a
Right.
higher end paint job, I kind of like busy.
Interesting.
It wasn't
That's
always
what-
that way. I was usually terrified of that. Right.
yeah, that's what we
So-
were talking about earlier, right? Like with these MCP models, I mean, they tend to be not as detailed, you know,
Right.
and kind of broad volumes. Or to define them, you can do some freehand to paint in some of those volumes and intensify them. So it does leave room for a lot of interpretation, which is why I really, really like painting MCP more so than maybe some other companies.
Yeah. It's super awesome. Okay, I'm gonna do one more thing on this before I airbrush it.
We have a question from
Uh-oh.
Ben. Ben says, since you're brushing, what are your thoughts on slap chop?
I think it's pretty brilliant, actually, like for what it is. Okay, so I didn't know for the longest time what slap chop actually was. I didn't know that you're supposed to dry brush gray down first. So I was doing a form of that where I just do a zenithal prime white and black, and then put the like contrast paint or speed paints work really well too. So I would just do that, but the gray actually gives you that good mid-tone color. So let's see if I can accentuate just some of these leading edges just a little bit. It may not matter at all, but if this works, I'm doing this technique on everything. So I'm literally using the exact same color that I dry brushed on here, which was the pale yellow in the yellow sections. But I think it's your paintbrush will put down a thicker line because it kind of has to. So that will give me a little bit broader highlight. Maybe I'll make it thicker on purpose. If you had told me 15 years ago this is how I'd be painting, I would have been like, you're on crack. It's just funny how everything sort of changes and
Yeah, getting that high contrast edges in there. Nice.
yeah, so watch when it goes down into the bluer, the more tealy sections, it's really going to show up.
Are you using titanium white for that, or are you using?
This is actually the pale yellow.
Yeah.
When I get out of here, I'll switch to the white. I don't know why I got gurgly throat going now, but it makes me sound sexy.
Does it?
That's what I'm telling myself. So the funny thing, I could also, but I really don't want to do it. I could put some squigglies up here in the main plates to show like super shiny metal. But I think I want the yellow or the red to be shiny but not super shiny, and then make the gold shinier. So I got a contrast between duller and, even though like Iron Man's just all shiny. But sometimes you just got to do things different. That, and then maybe we'll go hit this one again. I could play a total joke on the people watching and just do this for the next 3 hours.
No.
That was horrible. Believe me, I wouldn't make it either. I'm trying to focus on anything that's kind of a flat plate that's going back up towards my light source, because I feel like those would get blasted, right? Blasted with the light.
It's interesting. You're doing quite a lot of underpainting, right? You're doing a lot of underpainting, and then you're gonna do red on top of that.
Yeah. Okay, here's what I'm hoping will happen. I'm praying to God that this underpainting will show up fairly well under the red, and then that gives me less to do later. But obviously, if it doesn't work, then my next paint job, I will put the red on and then do this afterwards. But the problem is, like, just putting yellow highlights over the red is going to look weird. So I'm going to have to glaze back over that anyways, right? So...
Yeah,
this is
red's
like-
kind of a special color where it's like
it's definitely a special color.
I think yellow as well, where you can do things faster if you use underpainting because you're going to need to be very transparent anyways, because like for example with red, if you're painting really opaque, when you highlight it's going to turn pink, so you're going to have to be transparent at that point anyway, so might as well just use the transparency at this point, right?
Yeah, so it's a catch-22 because the highlight to red is technically red.
Yeah. Like the most saturated, brightest red will look like it's
right.
the brightest. Yeah.
Now that being said, you can put white and pink into red, and if it's done in the right amounts, it looks like it's right. Because if you look at like a poster of Iron Man and go take color swatches off his armor, there's parts that are pink and parts that are white. But it's really small. It's the exception to the rule, not the rule. You know.
Yeah, that's like the specular reflection off of the shiny material, right?
Yes, exactly. So if you want to recreate that, you're going to have to put some whites and pinks in. But I do that, but I try to do it as least as possible. Like I want the red to be just red. You know.
Yeah, that's cool.
So maybe red's all about the shadows.
It's interesting, yeah, because when I paint red, I don't do this much underpainting, which is interesting. So like maybe I'll try it out as well too sometime.
So
I tend to focus on the midtones and the shadows, and do some like mix some like maybe salmon into the red, so it's not so pinkish, but
right.
Yeah. And also like introduce some like maybe fluorescent colors, fluorescent reds to help with.
So I believe Andy Wardle is a big paint it white, paint it red. Trent Dennison, if you watch any of his videos on Twitch, he literally paints it red and then he puts white, big, bold, ugly white highlights everywhere. And then glazes over it.
The transition, yeah.
And it looks amazing. Like, obviously if he's doing a gaming piece, he doesn't go as far. But on his display pieces, like he actually gets that. It doesn't look like he put a white under base on it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just really, really amazing. I tried it and I don't think I got my glaze mixture quite right, and it just looked horrible. So I was like, oh. But that's where practice comes in, right? You just gotta keep working on it. So maybe we can do some. So in here. Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying the paint you use also matters to the pigments, and just getting used to working with them as well.
Yeah, that's for sure. So like even in these areas where it's darker, obviously my highlights probably won't be that bright in there, but I know that they're getting covered with red, so it's going to knock them down, and then hopefully I only have to do a minimal amount of re-highlighting at the end, because you always have to re-highlight a little bit. Unless you're lazy, and I could be lazy, who knows? We'll do some down here too. So maybe another trick I do on stuff that is not going to be in a competition or whatever, or more gaming, but I want it to look like it could have been in a competition, maybe. Maybe as I go down further, where I spend a lot of time highlighting the edges up here, maybe not as much down here. So I'll do some of them, maybe some of these bigger pieces, but then where I kind of got nitty gritty around up in here, maybe I don't do that down here. I just do minimal amount.
Yeah, I think that's like a really good point and good tip, especially if you're doing like maybe like army competitions, right?
Mhm.
Like best painted, where you want your figure to stand out, but you don't want to spend ages.
Yeah. So you can, even if you're going fast and you're not doing your, call it your best work, you can still do a lot of color theory and a lot of that stuff because that doesn't take extra time.
Yeah.
It just takes like doing it more yellow. Like you can really see the yellow now, I think, especially with the greenish tones. Like I can see it perfectly up here, white, yellow, but it's like not yellow. But yeah,
Yeah.
do a couple more of these. Also, what I'm hoping is that when I go to like N and M, the gold parts, I can spend more time on that because I save time on this. So rob
Yeah.
Peter to pay Paul.
Hmm.
That's one thing I like try to explain to people because sometimes I hear this comment. It's like, well, it doesn't look as good because I didn't want to spend so much time on something. If I had spent more time on it, it would automatically look better, you know?
It does
It's
no.
like,
You can spend 20 of the wrong hours.
yeah, exactly. But you know, I try to explain that it's like, well, we want to paint efficiently so that we have, um, we have the time to really dig in and make the painting look really good in the parts that matter the most. So you don't want to be like painting really slow and inefficient the entire way through your painting. You can have a really good result from it if you do that, but you're gonna burn out or you're gonna get tired with the piece, or you might just assume that to make really good painting, it just takes a really long time, and it's actually better to be more efficient so that you can slow down and be more accurate when you need to be.
Hmm.
Maybe we'll put. I usually put scratches in towards the end, but maybe we can put a couple. Like where would the scratches be? Definitely on like the shins and stuff. Um, Also, sometimes less is more. You just have a couple here and there. You don't need.
Yeah.
The first dreadnought I ever did that was like fully weathered. It was for my Black Templars army, and when I got done, it looked like it had been in a field for 90 years. Like it didn't even match the army. It was so. I mean, because it was fun. Let's be honest. Weathering can be super cool, but I just weathered the crap out of it, and it was like when I got done, I was like, I can't even use this in my army. It looked cool, but it was just too much. So sometimes one scratch can be all that you need. To just
Gotta match the rest of your army to it, man.
yeah, just kind of like cool.
Be like John Marjota and like
Yeah.
Yeah.
the key of weathering.
Busted out.
Weathering
Just
royalty.
rock it. I mean, sometimes the piece calls for that much, but like not every.
Well, he's almost got like a style for it, so.
Yeah.
But I mean, his whole army would be that way. You know what I mean? So like his
Yeah.
whole army just gone through like some intense.
That takes a long time to paint, though. Yeah. I actually charge like freehand rates if somebody wants a bunch of scratches and weathering, because all those scratches are freehand. Like you gotta, like you gotta do it good. You can't half-ass it. So, well, depending on how much they paid, but yeah, it takes a lot of extra time.
Right.
All right.
Almost like
He could just be the silver knight. Forget about the red. He's done. 20-minute paint job. All right. I do need to do the back. Gosh darn it. Wow. And again, who's gonna look at the back, right? Nobody.
Yeah, but you are.
Yeah, while I'm playing, I'm the only one who'll see the back, and I'll be annoyed to death.
The judges at Montez San Sabino will look at the back.
Yeah. Well,
They
he's
actually
not going to
about-
Monte Sansevino, so we don't have to worry about that.
they have a award for at Monte Sansevino called the Best of Back. So the
I
best team of
saw
back.
that in one of their coverages or whatever. That's funny.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see how fast I can do this.
Speed demon.
Speed demon. Part of it in my head, I'm like, and then I'm gonna spray it, and all this will go away, and I'll be like, damn it, why didn't I just wait and do that afterwards? But I think it'll work, because even if it mostly goes away, it's still there, right? And then doing a minimal highlight over it actually is more effective. So I think it'll work.
No, I am very, very curious about how it's gonna turn out.
So am I. We're in the same boat. I mean, I've done things similar to this, but I never did the dry brushing first.
Yeah.
But I just figured there was a lot of detail on it, so that's a great way to kind of start that dry brushing without it looking too dry brushed, and then I can just detail it after.
No, it should be cool. I'm curious about what you use for red and your dilution and
Yeah.
added it.
So I know what I normally pick, but usually I pick opaque colors and I just build it up that way. But I want to do a little bit more see-through, but still have that feel of being opaque. So I took my first.
You ever spray like inks through the airbrush?
Yeah.
Just pure inks,
Yep.
not diluted.
Nope.
I use a medium actually, but it's just different than like an airbrush, airbrush thinner. Actually, kind of gives the paint a little extra body. It gives the ink a little extra body.
The
Right.
thinner. I mean the medium.
Yeah, the medium does. Yeah, but it's designed for the airbrush, so it'll go right through.
So it doesn't like
So it doesn't spider.
yeah, it does spiders and shit.
So I have one airbrush color that I've never been able to use is raw umber, and it just spiders every time. It doesn't matter my air pressure, nothing. It just, for some reason, that particular color is like, no, I don't feel like going through the airbrush. But everything else I can control pretty perfectly. Like you'll see here in a second when I do it. I have pretty good brush control. Like I practice that a lot. So
Yeah.
So I run super high pressure and I have really good control, and I thin very little. Let's put it that way.
I agree with that. I usually run quite high pressure, and then use control of the brush,
Because it
both with the movement of the brush, and then also
Yeah.
isolating angles and
or
distance. And all that
spraying
stuff.
off the model and your overspray hits.
Yeah.
Like there's all those little things.
Yep.
It makes a big difference, but I mean that takes some time and some patience, because at first, especially because the airbrush, you can't really see inside the airbrush, so you don't really know what's going on when it's messing up till you figure it out. But oddly enough, that's why I've been teaching airbrushing classes for the last 12 years. Same class. It always fills up.
I just push through. I just pull harder on the trigger, and it usually works. But just joking. Don't do that.
just really, especially with inks. Oh my gosh!
Just
So-
pull it all the way back.
The first time I used an ink, I sprayed, and it like I wasn't expecting what happened to happen. It just blasted ink all over my model, and I'm like, I'm never using that again. And I literally had all these inks that I just sat on my desk for years, and then when I finally figured it out, I was like, oh my gosh, this stuff's awesome. You just don't spray as hard. like take your time. It's cool, and they're so what is it called? Saturated, the color. It builds up so quick. So my little 10% sprays I was talking about, that's all you need to do. Like it just a little bit here and there, and it's like at 100% very quickly. And I never go to 100%, so it's even faster. All right.
Eric is in the house. He says that thanks for joining, Eric. And I don't usually. This is Anthony. I don't usually come on the Miniature Monthly streams only for the MCP Adepticon Showdown streams.
Yeah, he's our super special guest.
Special. air
Special.
quotes.
Very, very special guest.
But yeah. James says that he fires ink more often than paint. Just curious, like James, do you use any mediums? Do you just use water? How do you dilute your paint, or do you just shoot it straight through?
Yeah, what's he doing?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of a delay on Twitch, so
There is.
Yeah.
That's why I'm not looking at the screen that has my painting because I would be so confused right now.
Yeah, it's super confused.
It's confusing for me because you can have a conversation and I'm having to listen to you twice.
Right.
I don't know when to answer you and it's messing with my brain.
Yeah, if you didn't think I talked too much already, just imagine having to hear me twice.
Yeah. Y'all only have to listen
Back
to
to
it
Double the
once.
pleasure, Liz, right?
We got it.
Oh my
we
God.
got it.
My brain.
All right. That wasn't too bad, right? Just a little bit more time. And then once I put this red on, I can see all the, I mean, obviously I didn't hit everything, but sometimes you don't want to hit every single detail because then it's too much. But maybe if I find that there's stuff I want to do a little bit later, I will come back and re-hit it. All right. Oops. I can maybe make some certain details a little bit more prominent than others, just to, so they take the attention.
You know, I'm really curious, Aaron. So, I don't know if you want to give away your secrets, but
No. No, I'm just kidding.
you do a lot of commission work
Yeah.
and a lot of like paint jobs and stuff like that, right? And I find that like when I've done commissions, you have to be pretty quick, but you have to capture the impact really very quickly, right? And efficiently, and you can't you may not be able to spend like equal amounts of time on every detail. So how do you pick out the details that are going to matter the most, and like kind of what you're doing that here too, right?
Head.
Just put things up.
So it goes head, leading shoulder, gun, maybe the other shoulder. If I got time, start detailing a little further down.
You
But-
just post.
But that's about it. That's kind of what goes through my head. So also I paint the whole model at once. So like with this model, let's say I had 45 minutes to paint this because I was an idiot and I charged a person like $20 to paint this huge model. I'm done right now. I don't care if they wanted a red guy. I mean, so I would have a big problem there, right? So instead of maybe doing all these extra highlights, I'm like, okay, this is a really, really low end. I'm going to get the best I can. I'd probably still do the dry brushing and then I'd just do red and I'm pretty much done.
Mm-hmm.
So but if I paint the whole model at once, like if I'm painting this model right here, and this is how I learned. I learned the hard way. The very first commission I ever did, I charged, I don't know, $30 for a hero. And I was like, okay, in my mind, well, back then I was making $10 an hour, so it was 3-hour paint job. And so I spent 2.5 hours on the legs because I was like, I'm going to work my way up the model because that's how I always painted. And then I got them done and they were to a pretty high degree for a 3-hour paint job. They were really good. And then I had half an hour to finish the top of the model, which was the most important part. So I learned real quick that you can't paint in parts if you want to do that. Unless you're just really good at managing your time. But guess what? I'm not. I don't know anybody who is, So that's kind of how I started. The other little trick I did was when I get a commission, I tell them the price, and then, I've always had the pride of like, I'm not going to come back to them and be like, it took way longer than I thought, unless I told them right up front, I don't know how long this is going to take. Let's start at this. Are you okay if it takes longer? Are you okay to pay more? And if they say yes, then that's different. But most people aren't. They're just like, paint my Space Marine. And I started keeping track of my time. And what would happen is if I went over, so if it's a 3-hour paint job and I spent 4 hours, I wouldn't divide my pay by 4 now. I would. It was the last hour was free. So, Anthony, you have a kid. So,
If you have a kid.
if you didn't know, you have a kid. He's super cute. If you mismanaged your work so badly that like every month you had to spend the last week to week and a half working for free, how would that work out for your son eating every month? Not real well. So that like I had 2 kids and that put the fear of God in me, and I was like, I can't work for free for a week, let alone, especially at $10 an hour back then. I wasn't making very much money at all. So I got really good at just being like, okay, this is how many hours I have, and then knowing that if I failed on that guesstimate and I worked over, it was free hours. And it's funny when you go from $10 an hour to $7 an hour, you can kind of stomach it maybe, but when you go from $10 an hour to free, those free hours start weighing on you real quick, and you're just like, nope, not going to do that. So I got good at like just painting in a method that I could. If this model, if this was the end of the paint job, it doesn't look horrible. I mean, it definitely doesn't look like Iron Man, but but it looks kind of cool in its own way. He's like a.
From your underpainting here, it was looking.
It did give us some color, and then when people were like, "Oh, he's a cool teal knight," and you're like, "No, he's red." You got it. So
he's Mark 1300.
Yeah. I don't know. It's one of the Iron Mans that hasn't come out yet, so that's what it is. But yeah, so that was kind of my trick, was just paint as much of the model at once as I can, and then I start at the head, and I work my way down, and so at any stage when I finish, the model looks done. It's not like the legs are way better than the head. It's like the head's really good. And we started finding, we did some tests on customers. Like we had this one, we literally base coated the bottom of the model. We painted the top of the model with like several highlights. And then we gave it to him and we're like, we're done. And like we literally hadn't painted the bottom of the model. And the guy was like, this is amazing, and took the model and left. And we're like, holy cow, we did mind control on him. But it's true because things that aren't like in focus or things that aren't well defined, your brain doesn't care about them. Like it immediately tunes them out. So you can use that to your advantage, because if you have areas of your model that you paint really well, and then it can't be an abrupt stop, because that's like, it looks weird. But if you just sort of like it trickles down and then there's less and less highlights, nobody's going to care about anything down here. They're just going to be like, oh yeah, whatever, Like I could do a cool fire effect coming off the feet, and then maybe I don't need to detail out the bottom of the feet as much, because people are going to get down to here and go, whoa, the fire, You just control their minds. That's what we need to do when we fight Dallas. He needs to be wowed.
Who's gonna light him on fire first?
Yeah. It'll be awesome.
It'll be great. I wonder, just so in case people are tuning in for the first time and don't know what this is about, we are painting our teams. Aaron will have a team of MCP figures. Matt will have one, and I will have one. And we're teaming up versus Dallas, and we're gonna do like a epic battle, like a 3-on-1 battle. And so the streams that we're doing now, and we're doing this once a month on Wednesdays, are just about us talking about painting our figures, but also chatting about just painting in general, and celebrating the MCP community as well too.
That is it.
Color of the month for me.
All right. Okay, so we're gonna try this. I've never airbrushed ball red, so we'll see where it goes. The contrast paint, you should be able to just run straight through.
So this is contrast paint.
Yeah. So
Open?
Oh, what I was saying earlier. So at Nova Open, I did my first Nova Open,
Yep.
and I took my first airbrushing class ever. Like didn't teach it, I took it. Because when
Oh.
I started teaching, there was nobody teaching airbrushing. So, like I just had to figure it all out on my own, and then it was what it was. But I took a class with Dan Osborne, and if you don't know who Dan Osborne is, he's friggin' amazing, and he kind of runs the whole thing or he's the guy who gets everything going at Nova Open for the classes. But he taught his airbrushing class, so he was spraying with just contrast paint. Like he was doing an underpainting with just airbrushing, and then he would do the contrast over that, and it worked really, really well. I was like, dang. Now you do have to. He wasn't really painting on top of this, and the problem when you're doing see-through paints, unless you're matte, basically, it's really hard to paint over this then with the brush. But you can if you get that's why you need to get good at blending, so you can do highlights on top of your airbrushing. But anyways, he sprayed the whole thing with just contrast paints because they're see-through, they're really vibrant, and you get all of this underpainting hopefully shows up. So we're gonna find out if this works. But if you see, this is my red, and I think this is a good Iron Man red. It's very orangey red, so I think that'll work. And I can always cool it off with more of the teal if I need to. So now on this thing, I'm going to do the same thing. If I spray from this direction up, I'm losing all those shadows I built in before, right? So I don't want to do that unless I really, really have to. So we're going to go top down, and maybe we'll start. I think almost I want less opacity up here and more down here. So maybe I start at the bottom first. So see my sprays like that? See how it's turning red? Mm-hmm. It's like this much. That's what I'm spraying. And I'll do it with the ink too later, so you can see the same thing.
Do you ever get like is the contrast paint ever so pigmented that it clogs?
It could, but I'm also spraying at 40, so I don't have clog problems like normal people.
40 psi.
Yeah, if you spray at a high psi, you don't clog as easily.
You would think that you would dry tip more, but you don't even do that. It literally blows everything off. It does eventually. Don't get me wrong. You still clog. You still do everything as normal, but so you can also see with these 10% sprays, I get a certain shade of red. It's kind of pink, huh? So as I build it up,
it looks a little purplish.
It might be too, because there's the bluish teal.
Yeah, the greens
right?
underneath.
Yeah. So see how that's working for me a little bit here. Rather than turning brown, it's turning like and also maybe I could do a test later. I'll actually put those colors together with red and just see what color it actually makes. But it should make like a grayish color at the end of the day. And I may be going a little slower than I would normally go because so people can see what's happening, but I'm a very impatient painter. I just want it to be done as quick as possible. So maybe over here in the darker areas, maybe I don't hit them as much, so that. Also watching my spray, it does look a little bit speckly, so it might be a little bit thick. Some of the GW reds are thick. Can also take like Flesh Terror's red. I love using as to tint other colors, but man, it's really thick. It's almost like regular paint. It's not even contrast. But And the thing is, I do experiments like this all the time, just to see if a different way works better or what happens. And if it doesn't, I just chalk that up to like, okay, wasn't the coolest effect. I'll do it differently or do it the old way or whatever. Just always keep your mind open to try things differently.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Yeah, go ahead. No.
I'm always painting differently. I always just want to try something different. I mean, so it seems like some people like they have the way that they always start and they always do it that way, and I don't know.
It drives me a little bit crazy. I can't do it.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I do it the hard way, and I know that it's going to take me longer, but I just do it the hard way because I feel like I just need that in my life.
Like even when I was studio painting, I was trying to, try different, ways to do things while still like having everything to look coherent.
Right.
Probably because I was going a little nuts.
Yeah, you definitely go nuts. It's I do not blame you at all.
Aaron, you know what it's like.
I can commiserate. Yes. So the Apocalypse train I did for MCP, I spent 2 weeks painting the redstone. So that redstone was a pretty simple mix. It was like 3 or 4 colors tops. So that meant for 2 weeks I had the same 4 colors on my palette. It was horrible. I mean, it looked cool in the end, so it was worth it. It was all worth it, but it's just a lot of that and
A lot of the same stuff.
yeah. And again, had I just like dry brushed it and called it a day, it would have been very quick. But
Matt, what did you experiment? What factions did you experiment on? I'm just curious. All of them?
Yeah, all of them. Well, the thing is, like, yeah. I mean, so here's an example. Like when I first started painting Scorn, for example. So they have like red armor with gold edge trim to them, right? And if anybody's ever painted something with red armor and gold trim, anything with, and it's got like trim on everything, right? Gold doesn't get very good coverage, so you have to paint the trim multiple times after you've already painted the red, so if you make any mistakes, it's red, it's hard to like overpaint things with red because it's such a procedure to get that bright red. So it was kind of a challenge. You had to be really precise. It took a really long time. It made Scorn like really difficult. So one of the things that I was able to sell them on was, and also it's like that army was like red on red and black. It was like red and black. And so if the other challenge was that like it's all red, right? So if everything is painted red, it's kind of like hard to like have things stand out and look good. So you have these two problems, and the way I tried to solve both of the problems at once was I kind of made this rule that like the red armor was gonna be like gold, like lacquered red. So what I would do is I would start at the very beginning. I would dry brush the whole thing gold, and just the armor. All the armor would get dry brushed gold, and then I'd work up through like gold mixed with silver, so there's like highlights in the gold and everything. And then I used red ink, and red ink mixtures, and like blended like red ink mixture over the armor, leaving gold trim behind. Right?
Oh yeah.
So the gold trim was already painted.
Yeah.
And then like the tabard would be painted, in a red as well, but it would be painted like not metallic red. So you'd have two different reds on the figure that would look really distinctive from one another as well. And it was a lot more efficient, and it kind of saved my sanity. And after a while, I really liked painting Scorn. I mean, I liked almost all of the factions. there's a couple factions that I really hated painting though.
Like what?
I really did not enjoy painting the Retribution of Sky.
Oh, I was gonna say, but that's one of my favorite stuff of yours, man.
No.
No.
Well, it was just, man,
This
all
wasn't
that
your thing.
all that
White.
white, like I felt like it was the problem is they like to make something look like it was glowing on a figure. It needs to be the like brightest value on that figure. Like it needs to be the brightest white. And their armor was this this super bright white.
Yeah, so it's
Armor.
hard to
So the glow never looked like it was glowing to me. Like it just bugged so bad. Like I tried to explain that they were running the risk of this happening, and we kind of went that way anyways. But yeah, so it was a constant frustration for me because I wanted them to look good. It was really important to me that I want these things to look cool. I want these models to look the best that they can be. To present them in a way that people are going to be excited about them. So
You did it. It's like I love those distributions.
yeah, like even if I didn't enjoy that's the thing, because I trained a lot of studio painters, and sometimes I think the hardest thing about studio painting is when you're not having a good time and you still need a good job. Like you can't have like it gets brutal if you have an off day, let's just say. Because like people they'll tell you what they think, so it's kind of like integrity. Even if you're having a bad day,
you still got to bring it.
you still got to bring it. And a lot of times it turns around by the end where you're like, oh man, I feel proud about that piece, even though it was a struggle for me to feel it. So yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, it's looking red now, Aaron.
Yeah. So I have the problem where I'm airbrushing and paint's coming out, or I'm just hitting the air and paint's coming out, which means I have a clog going on. It's like clogged on one side of the nozzle, but not the other. So it's holding my needle back and it's letting paint out. And it's ink, so it's coming out really fast. I don't want to clean it, so we're just going to go for it. I'm just going to have to be really careful. Yeah, so you can see on my finger.
It's turning your brush into a single action.
Yeah, it's a single action brush now.
Yeah.
But the alternative is I got to clean everything out. So I'm just going to do real light 10% sprays and pretend like... I mean, it's only letting the paint out a little bit, so it's kind of cool because I can control it still, even though I'm technically out of control. So this is ink. So you can see I can just spray this ink. Like if I spray just a little bit, like I can put a pretty small little, well that's pretty big, but I got to be really careful because it's actually letting quite a bit of ink out. But I won't get super close, and I'll just sort of stay back. And now this will give me a little bit more saturated color and a little bit of shininess, so that makes the red even redder. So that's what I'm going to tell myself at least. Who is it? You know Matt Sedgwick, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was watching a video where he was actually painting a War Machine model, and he was airbrushing it with blue, and he said, or I think it was red, and he goes, sometimes red can be like chalky looking. He goes, if you put just a little bit of what's it called, semi-gloss in your paint mix when you're thinning it, it makes it redder. So when it's more matte, it doesn't look as red. It'll look chalky.
Yeah.
So I've used that. I use that a lot with inks because they're semi-gloss. But I don't want it to be shiny. But if I spray 10% of a semi-gloss paint down, I get 10% semi-gloss too. So I can control it that way.
Yeah, I don't really worry too much about the shininess because I'm just gonna, seal it and
yeah, I don't seal anything.
unify the finish at the end.
Right. I'm a non-sealing monster. But I also find a lot of times the colors change when I seal them. So unless I want that to happen, I don't worry about it.
You know what happens is that like if things are already really matte and you seal them, then they can get too matte, and that changes the colors. Makes them look kind of grayish. But if things are like sort of semi-glossy and you seal it, it will kind of come out perfect.
Okay. Good to know.
That's kind of how I handle it.
The trick of the trade.
Yeah. I also don't use like the super ultra matte stuff. So.
What are we doing time-wise? We've gone 1 hour 45. So I'm just going to put some more of my dark color in here. Hopefully it's not too dry. It's pretty dry, but whatever. We'll make a glaze out of it. So I put thinner in my cup and then just put the paint in. Let's see what this does. Maybe put a little bit more. Just tons of thinner. There we go. So now we'll go at a really harsh angle so it can get shadows, and then it leaves detail. So if you spray directly on, you lose all the detail. So just use that angle as your friend. And this is where I'll be asking myself lots of questions like, okay, did I need to do any of that stuff before? Because if I'm just re-hitting spots, but maybe I'm not hitting everywhere though. So it's just in spots. And a lot of times I don't do my final shadows until the very end of the paint job anyways, and I'll airbrush them in or glaze them in by hand. But sometimes it's nice to kind of get like, okay, I'm seeing where this is going. It's funny, I never pulled my lights in. Oh, I missed a spot right there. Okay, that's okay. Some nice shadows in there. Or a little bit, like just slightly darker. So this is where I want that shadow to go back over the red. And it creates a different color shadow. Even though it's the same color shadow basically that I started with. If you're just learning how to airbrush, I strongly recommend like doing terrain. Just airbrush a bunch of terrain. You'll thank me later. Now the only thing I don't like about starting with like a zenithal prime and putting color over it is anywhere where you missed. So I'm noticing I missed a little bit in here. I missed a little bit in here. It flattens out the color. Like you gotta make sure that you cover everything, or at least enough to where it looks right.
You mean you miss what with the red?
I didn't get the red over the white, so there's still white showing through. I do think that is starting to pop it out a little bit. That's cool. And then I want to see I really liked having that teal in there, so it's just rock and roll.
I start painting these X-Men guys, and I just have the X-Men from 90s cartoon theme song in my theme in my head instantly.
Oh,
Have you
thanks.
seen X-Men 97? Have you seen X-Men 97, Matt? Or Aaron?
No, I don't think
no.
so.
It's the
Did-
new. It's a new series, but done in the same style as a '90s cartoon. It's on it's on Disney Plus. Really good.
Yeah, when I sign back up for Disney Plus, I'll check it out.
Yeah, it's good.
When Andor season 2 comes out, I'll sign back up.
Oh man, Andor is so good.
Oh my god, it's like the best Star Wars thing that.
It was pretty decent too. Have you seen Ahsoka?
Yeah, we watched Ahsoka.
That's
I enjoyed
like-
it. I enjoyed it.
I like the gritty, the grittier Star Wars stuff.
Yeah, me too. Not everybody. I know some people like the more fantastical stuff, but which I mean I enjoy it. There's definitely some Star Wars stuff that I think is not good or I don't like, but it doesn't mean that other people can't like it. But yeah, I like the more gritty sort of stories. I mean, the original trilogy was pretty gritty too.
It was, yeah. I mean,
know?
this is gnarly, dude.
Yeah, I mean, so at least especially as a kid, you're watching that. And it has its lighthearted moments and stuff, but man, it's affecting for sure. So I kind of want that when I watch Star Wars, not. But everybody sort of grew up with a different Star Wars. The different generations kind of grew up with a different Star Wars a lot of times. So interesting to talk to different people from different generations about what Star Wars were like for them when they were kids.
Yeah. I mean, I like Ewoks, but apparently people hated them. So
Yeah. And I've had people who love Jar Jar Binks, for example, like, I take exception to some of the. I don't know. I couldn't stand him personally, but
If he had like 2 lines in the movie, it would have been like, oh, okay, yeah, that guy was funny. But
Yeah.
for him to be a main character was like, it was just hard.
it's like it's fine to have things break the tension, but when it's like every tense scene is broken by this character, it kind of gets a little.
By an idiot.
It's like you do want some tension in this movie, don't you?
apparently not.
Really not. But
Could be. Okay.
not to annoy any Jar Jar Binks fans out there. So, but all entitled to their own opinions. But yeah, Andor is going to be awesome. I'm really looking forward to the second season. I'm not sure when it comes out. I don't really keep track. I know that I'm going to see people talking about it when it comes out. I'll be like, okay, I'll watch that. I've been watching Rings of Power season 2, and honestly, like that show kind of got a bad rap. I think Rings of Power. Personally, I actually really am enjoying it. I think it might have been just because like it is sort of a very slow burn, and it's kind of like a long slow burn epic. And I think that like having that sort of thing released like on a weekly schedule sometimes like it can be hard for people to just be like stay engaged and remember what happened and stuff like that. That's just my theory why it didn't get as much good press or whatever. There's definitely things that you can take issues with in it, but honestly, like it's got a really high production value and it's pretty good.
Rays of Power?
Rings of Power, the Lord of the Rings.
Oh, the Lord of the Rings one.
on Amazon.
Did the new season come out already?
Yeah. Well, it's coming out. It's not fully released yet. So they're releasing they have released like the first 3 episodes, and then they're releasing one every week or something like that.
I kind of enjoyed it. It was, I mean, not my favorite, but I thought it was
The second season is better than the first season. So if you kind of enjoyed the first season, I recommend continuing because it gets better.
Hmm.
So
So what are you doing now, Aaron?
yeah,
Just living my best life.
it's looking pretty bright
Yeah.
in a good way.
Yeah, so I'm gonna have to evaluate my first steps again later. I mean, it does show up in spots like really well, so it works. But maybe I wouldn't spend it. I wouldn't do probably the last highlight. Maybe next time, because I can just do it now. But
Oh,
think
you
it
mean
works.
on the underpainting highlights?
yeah. I don't think because I don't know. Some of them do show up like completely. So I think maybe just in the areas where it's like lighter next to brighter, it just doesn't show up as well. So I'll just remember that. Like in the darker areas, those highlights are worth it. It's not a wasted brushstroke. And in the lighter areas, I don't worry about it. I can come back in and re-highlight them later. With whatever color I end up doing. So. Yeah, I think that works for the start of this. Cool beans.
We're at hour 43.
All right. Oh, we're at an hour 43, or are we?
We're at an
Okay.
hour
Or
43.
almost 2 hours.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Cool.
And what's your your airbrush process? You're gonna leave that that kind of cool like blue
Yeah,
blue
because
light
I'm
on
gonna
the
have
side.
I'm gonna have bluish fire coming out of here, so there will be like some underglow underneath him, and then the rest of this can just be like maybe it's bounce light or something, or it just looks different and cool. And I get the contrast
Good luck, yeah.
from warm and cool. And then he's also has his little blasters in his hands. I think his knees could probably glow a little bit if I wanted to. Definitely in the chest. So, I think that works.
Solar Wind is headed to bed. He said goodnight.
Good night, Solar Wind. Let me see. I'm gonna see if I can pull off putting my yellow into the red.
So I had a really cool animal encounter today.
Yeah.
Yeah, today was like the first day of like really hard rain
Okay.
where I live, and for those who don't know, I live in Washington State. And we built this pond in our side yard, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I had this stream that goes by, and the pond has like gotten wrecked up a few times by animals. And I know I've seen raccoons go into it, right? But we live right next to the ocean, right? And I've always thought, and I've also can sort of track animals and stuff like that. So I saw some tracks that I thought were otters. And so I have this theory that like the otters would come up our stream and then like, have a party in our pond, like tip over plants and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it was raining today, like pretty hard rain, and I went out there just to go to my truck, and there's like 5 otters in a pond.
What? Seriously?
Yeah, they're like just like a whole otter families in the pond, and I got like really good video of them. Like I got like a minute's worth of like really good video, and they're so freaking cute.
What were they doing? Were they like
And so they were just rolling around and they were probably eating some of my fish. And yeah, everybody asks like, "Oh, do you have koi?" I'm like, "No, I
Not
can't
anymore.
have koi. I can't." No, no, I'm like, "No, the otters will eat the koi." You know, they're like, "No."
That'd be
It's
an
like, yeah,
expensive
actually,
lunch.
these like giant river otters, they also swim around the
These
ocean. They
nuts.
come up the river and
Ha!
they
Got
jump in
him!
my pond and eat my fish and
Got
stuff, which
him!
is fine. You know, the fish actually outbreed them. But I was able to like get within like 2 feet of these otters before they freaked out and ran
They're
away.
like, oh, wait a
It was
second.
really cool.
Giant river otters, like
Yeah.
not ocean otters, river otters, right? Okay.
Well, they're called giant river otters, right? But they swim in both our ocean and go up the rivers, and so they do both, right? But they're not
Yeah.
the fluffy like sea otters that you see. These guys, they like this otter that I saw today was like 6 feet long.
What?
Yeah, yeah.
That otter was a man, baby.
Yeah, it was big, and they look like giant ferrets, or like I call them water sausages. They're really cool. Like they swim in the ocean. They dive down to get fish and shellfish and stuff like that, and then they go up the rivers. Apparently, they're really cool. But it was the first time I confirmed my theory, and we actually saw them frolicking, so it's pretty great.
You see one sitting there smoking a cigarette, that's when you know you'll be in trouble.
Yeah, I guess we could play. I mean, I don't know. At the end of this, we could play the video if you want, Aaron. I don't know. We'll want to see frolicking otters.
Yeah.
Here, I'll send you the link here, and we'll see. It's just a minute long. We can share at the end.
You found them real quick.
The ultimate otter challenge.
I was like, they're usually pretty aware, but it was raining, and I think that they're just like, these humans don't come out in the rain.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, they came out of the rain.
Yeah. Run, cheese it.
Right, so I just kind of tested putting some edge highlights on things just to see what it looks like. I think that'll work.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Nice, dude.
Shiny.
And I don't want this to be as shiny as the gold, so I would probably leave it. Also, I need to finish it at some point, so maybe I just don't do too much to my flat surfaces. I might add some stuff at some point, but kind of works. Sweet. All right. I think I will leave this here for now. At least you get an idea of doing the base coats with the airbrush and then getting started on some of those highlights.
Nice. I think there was a lot of good information in there.
Yeah. I do like the blues. You see I pushed in some more of that teal over here. It's funny, as you paint it, sometimes that goes away. It's weird. So you might have to reapply it later or something just to bump it up if I want to. But cool beans. All right. Do you guys want to see?
The
Oh,
otters.
our what did I call it? Community paint jobs.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
got. Let's see here.
Do it.
So this-
Yeah. I haven't seen this one. This is hilarious.
Okay, got it. I'm back. Okay, yeah. Okay, so I didn't realize. Oh my gosh, this is hilarious. Oh my gosh. I knew I picked this one for a reason. It wasn't just because I did the box art for it. This is probably the best conversion ever seen in the history of mankind, by Alexander Justice Backhouse. And hopefully I got all these names right. I was kind of jumping through Facebook and I wrote all of them down. I actually named the pictures, whatever their name was on Facebook. But if I misspelled it or something, sorry. And feel free to tag yourself if you see anything that you were in. But this one's super cool. That was a fun model to do the box art of, but this is even more fun. Borat's one of my favorite characters of all time, so very cool. Oh, this one's awesome. So, Chloe Lydia Clegg, and she's actually on the Marvel Facebook page quite a bit. Actually, she had a few posts today. Just amazing. I love these ones. So I did the box art, well, just for Vulture. That's funny. She put Wolverine in there.
Cohesive, right? And they're
Yeah,
kind of tight.
I love the vibrance of the colors she got on that. Sandman looks super cool. So the one thing I was like, there's something weird, and the cinder blocks are red like bricks, and cinder blocks are normally gray.
Yeah.
But I like them being red. Like they actually show up nicely in the sand. So that's like one of those, it's like the artistic. You change something for the sake of the piece. I
Artistic
love it.
license.
Yeah, the artistic license. I think she did a great job on that. But super, super cool.
I like the brush strokes on the
Oh, here's
sand.
her Shocker. So this is the other box art that I did. So she did Shocker too.
Yeah, I think that the paint jobs jive well together. They seem to fit. They seem cohesive.
Yeah, because like these ones are all super vibrant, and then Shocker's pretty vibrant. Very cool. This one is so stinking cool. So Chris Velez.
Yeah, I saw this
one.
one.
One's amazing. Like I love
His
it.
armor.
Yes.
Sweet.
Super rad. Dallas just did a conversion of a guy for the Apocalypse or whatever. Speaking of Dallas, Dallas Kemp made our show.
Nice. I like that one. It looks cool.
Yeah. Super good. This one's interesting. So we got to look at this one in reverse order. So this is the models. This is actually one of my former students, except I didn't teach him how to do comic book style. But he did the very drastic comic book style, which I think looks cool. But then it's also glow in the dark. So,
yeah. Nice.
Super rad.
Like, who makes glow in the dark paint?
I don't know. Somebody. I mean, I'm sure there's a black light on it, so it's maybe more
black
like
light?
neon. Yeah. It's like neon, not really glow in the dark. I don't know, but it's still
No,
pretty
any glow in the dark paint will also fluorescent the black.
Gotcha. So then we got John Adams. I love how he did his little kicker colors here, sort of the rim lighting or whatever.
Nice.
I like this model. I want to paint one of these. Great job, John. Then we've got Jonathan Ho, who is like the king of painting Marvel stuff. He has 2 Best in Shows back to back, and just an amazing paint job on this one. Super cool.
Yeah. Nice.
Like his yellows are really creamy. Anyways, great job. Christian Carlson.
It looks like that blue glacial ice, like that really thick blue glacial ice. Like it.
It's a cool take, you know.
Yeah, it's almost a mixture of comic book style and then regular a little bit. Like the colors in the blue kind of blend in really well. I like it.
I really love that figure. Obviously,
Really?
I painted it the last stream. I painted that one,
Do
but
tell.
yeah.
That was awesome.
If you haven't seen it, you should check it out.
Yeah. So this is Christian Carlson. This is another really like a really cool model, but just I love all the colors on the base too. Like I wouldn't have thought to put green
Yeah.
in this great, but it
Right.
works. It's like very New York, you know?
Mhm.
What I really like about this model though is that Christian was able to get like the volumes and lighting pretty really even and consistent despite all those like web things that's disrupting the
Disrupting
volume.
everything. Yeah.
So it reads really well, even though it's really complex.
Oh, I bet all these models that we've seen so far look great on the table. Like, so
Oh, yeah,
I
for
absolutely
sure.
love this. I swear to God, I wasn't just trying to pick models that I've done box art for, but maybe I've gravitated to them.
Those look great.
So Manolo Vega, this one, I love this paint job. I think it's so cool. You did a great job on this. Just amazing. Here's another
like
conversion. Oh, they actually used plasticard as well as green stuff. That was a good idea.
Yeah, that really thin plastic card to get the.
Pharaoh, Egyptian.
Yeah, I wonder which character they're trying to make. This is Mike Corkill.
I guess we'll just have to see when
We'll
he's
find
finished.
out. Yeah, I'm sure he'll post again at some point. Okay, so I gotta say this is like one of the best versions I've seen of this model. Neil Ellen, this is amazing. This is so, like I love this paint job. It's another model that I've done the box art for. I'll let you guys pick the models next time. But they are very good paint jobs. Like
No,
really
this is very nice.
nice.
Yeah.
I did the box art for this one too, so we're just going with the Aaron Lovejoy, whatever. But
I like this one because he's got a lighter color base, and it really like makes Black Panther look dark. You know.
Yeah.
It comes together.
That's a definitely trick I learned on painting armies and stuff. You know, if the model was like if you were painting Black Templars or something dark, you'd do a lighter base, and then if you're painting something light, you do a darker base. Like it just do yourself a favor, you know, like don't fight it. But it does definitely like ring the character good. And then you also have these lighter tones of the gray right in the middle, which is right where he is. So I like the plants too. I wonder if these are those 3D print plants, because I don't think that came in the set.
I don't think so either.
Is that the base that he comes on? That gorilla statue thing?
So like I said, I did the box art for this. I can't remember. So sometimes they do like decorative bases. Seems like for the Wakanda stuff, there was more decorative bases. So that might have been the base that it comes with. I can't remember. My favorite character. Steve.
You did a lot of cool versions of this guy.
Yes. I love his lettering. Like the highlights on top of those O's look so good.
Yeah, it looks good.
He's gonna be the next one, I think, after Psylocke.
He went crazy on the bomb. Very cool. And we've got. Oh, I love this one. So you were talking about tone on tone. You know, like she's all pink, but some of it's warm, some of it's cool. Looks rad. Thomas Hoffman. Very cool. I love the group shots.
It's funny, like a lot of the characters in this group are ones that I'm going to paint or I've already painted for them.
Anthony's painted. See, so I gave you guys some love. You're actually painting this one right now, right? Is this the one?
Yeah, I started him at the beginning of our stream, but he's kind of like at an intermediate stage. I was about to start doing all the black comic book inking on him, so he's not much to look at quite yet.
Very cool. Tom Carter, great job, Tom.
Yeah, look really consistent. Nice.
So I don't think this is the base that comes with this, but
Mm.
pretty
Definitely
cool.
straight from the movie.
Yeah, for sure.
It's really, really clever to have the horns be holding Thor too, so he looks
Yeah.
super fun. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know about you guys, but I think that was my favorite Thor movie. Ragnarok.
Yeah. Is it Ragnar?
Thor Ragnarok, yeah.
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 'Cause at the beginning, he like kills the fire giant and takes its
Mm.
skull back to.
This
Mm.
is Zach Cohen, a little bit of OSL off the back of it. I probably should show it in the other order. So,
Yeah.
very cool. So one thing I love about Marvel figures is it's like okay to just do the brightest colors you can find, because it's just like it's so comic book, but you can also be subdued, and that's okay too. But you just seem like you see a lot more colors, and I don't know, I like colors.
Yeah, you want to be super dramatic. I
Yes,
think.
yes.
And the models, the sculpts are really dramatic too. I think that they do a really good job over there with the poses and the sculpts and just really showing the models off in a good way, you know.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good.
Very cool. Very cool. Okay. Hold on a second. Let me switch back.
Switching back, Ben mentioned Chloe's Vietnam War conversions. Have you seen this?
Yes, I saw those today. Yeah.
We should put them on next time. Also, have you seen the Beach Party Hydra team?
Hold on a second. Okay, is that better? Yeah, should be.
Yeah.
What was the question, Anthony?
Have you seen the Beach Party, like, not Hydra, but Beach Party Cabal team?
I don't think
Where
so.
they're all like at the beach?
No, I haven't seen that one.
Oh, dude.
I
Yeah.
didn't see it either.
Oh, okay.
Sounds
Let's
like
see it.
fun.
Yeah, they all have like super soakers, or they're like making them. That was hilarious.
Nice.
So I think for next show, like maybe you guys can just like make a little folder or something and share it with me, and then that way you guys have your picks. But I just threw something together real quick. But they're all really good. Like there's so much. I was looking through it today. I'm like, oh, I need to put more in. I'm like, we could just spend like 3 hours talking about other people's models. But it's super, super cool. So Matt, where you said you sent me a link? Oh yeah, you did. Okay.
Oh, for the otters? Yeah.
let's see.
Yeah, if you want to show those the otters
Let me
up.
switch back to.
Yeah, if you can yeah, that's it. If you can zoom in on it. So I use this little like tree to sneak up on them.
You made this pond, right? Did you make it?
Yeah, I made the pond, yeah. I get really close. Yeah, they're loving it. They haven't noticed me yet. He sees me. They cheese it. There's one left though. They left the baby behind. Yeah. It's really, really cute.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, switch back to.
That was super cute.
Okay, so now we've got to figure out. We're gonna do Sean Sarah's thing. So
Yeah. If you can make me full screen.
Let me switch. All right, so my mic's back on. Should be good. Matt's presenting, and we will. And then I just make. Oh. I can pin.
You
it.
see that?
Yes. The 3 little dots.
Oh shoot. For everyone. Oh no. I did the wrong one.
Wrong one.
Oh shoot. What am I doing? Pin.
Oh, sweet
It's not working.
Yes, it is.
Well, I can just make this bigger.
Watch
Like
out.
this. Watch. There. It's super ghetto fabulous, but we got it. We're good. Okay, that's the full Photoshop screen, so we should be all right. Okay.
So yeah, Sean wanted us to take a look at his attempt at painting non-metallic metals and get some feedback. He's brave to get some feedback, but this is really like what I do a lot. I teach a lot of clients online. So, and one of the things we do is we will pull the pictures of the model up in Photoshop, and then we can do some painting over of them and kind of talk about like what works, what we could do better, and how we could improve the effect. And then also talk about the theory behind it. Now, for me, like non-metallic metals, there's lots of different theories behind it, lots of different ways to paint it. But I have like kind of 3 guidelines, 3 rules that I think is universal throughout all of these ways to paint non-metallic metals. In fact, I don't even use the term non-metallic metal. The term I use is just reflective surfaces, because in reality, all the metal is a very reflective surface, and there's a lot of reflective surfaces out there. And once you kind of get into understanding what makes a reflective surface different than a non-reflective surface, it almost becomes a continuum that you can it's like a dial you can turn up or turn down. So you can do things like silk, which is like semi-reflective. Hair is semi-reflective. Vinyl, other types of effects will have the same properties as what reflective metal would look like. So that's the first thing to say is that and it's just easier to say reflective surfaces than non-metallic metal is kind of like a mouthful. So in any case, that's if you hear me say that, that's what we're kind of talking about the same thing. So so 3 things that you need to have your reflective surface look reflective. The first is high contrast. And I think that this figure, he definitely knows that rule is making the attempt. So the more reflective a surface is, the deeper the shadows might look, but also almost more importantly, the more bright your highlights should be on the value scale. So sometimes it's helpful to think about a non-reflective surface, which is kind of like the opposite. So like something like a wool cloak or something like that, it might have a lot less value contrast than that same material, or a cloak that was made out of a more reflective material might have darker shadows and brighter highlights. And you can see how he's kind of pushed the highlights up into, towards white. So he kind of understands that part about non-metallic metals or reflective surfaces. But even still, I think that we could have darker shadows in some, especially in the very, very deep shadows. So, if we could push it even further, and you kind of want to do this because later on you need to have space in order to paint an additional effect within the shadow area. which we'll talk about. It's kind of like the third rule, I would say. So we might want to actually make these areas darker.
That's
If you look
already,
at us,
oh, sorry, that's already giving you way more contrast. Just right there.
yeah, and yeah, you really need that extra level of contrast. So sometimes you might have the really bright highlights up to white that you need in order to sell the effect, but you also need dark shadows. And for a color like this, it might not get all the way to black, but it could get sort of close. And also make it a large area is the other thing, because some of that dark area is going to get taken back and occupied by, yeah, it's going to be used later. So especially for something that's really angular like Iron Man, you can paint that whole inside really dark. And I think that the effort has been made to do that as well. We can see it here. Some of this is like sort of from the lighting that the model is put under, but I think he is trying to like kind of make the interior of the leg darker. Right. I'm just going to do the red for right now. Right. So already it might look a little bit more reflective because now we have higher contrast. So you don't want to just push in one direction. You want to kind of push in both directions with the contrast. Now, the second aspect is actually one of the harder ones, which is like your transitions happen more abruptly with reflective surfaces. And this one's a really tricky one to wrap your head around, because we're so used to like trying to get really smooth blends all over everything, and whereas blending still matters, but it needs to happen more immediately. So what that means is that you don't want to focus so much on like making a smooth, like broad blended surface like that. It's more like we need to have a sharp, line or something going through the surface. And then you might sort of faintly soften around it, right? Instead of having like a really like gradual transition, especially if you're used to layering up your highlights on things, it can be it can be really challenging for painters to get this, because they're going through a lot of transitionary stages. And it's almost like you want to go through less transitions, or you want to like really boldly place in the highlights and then soften around them, right? At least that's what works for me. You might do something different, but also because we need to fit in a larger amount of contrast range, you need to be making bigger jumps. Right. Now, one thing that we're missing here as well is some edge lights, because what will happen with non-metallic or reflective surfaces is that when you have really angular stuff, at least some edge of this is going to be facing the light directly, and you're going to get like a pure reflection of that light, or a more pure reflection. So if you have like a vertical light, that should be where it's brightest. And then, having sort of a lot more line work going on. You don't want to use white going down here, but you can use your first highlight coming down here. So a lot more lines. And when you have a pool of high highlight like this, it will flow a little bit along the edges. I can't get the lines to taper as much because I'm as I would be able to do on a painted figure, but you kind of get the idea. So yeah, more abrupt surfaces. I do want to kind of address this here because I think that this is like a good example of something that's sort of abrupt, but we're missing the edges that go on top, because like actually this light's coming from above, so you know you're much more likely to get you need both this vertical highlight, and this would occur if this is a curved surface. If it's flat and angular, it would look different. So I can't really quite tell if it's curved or not, but I'm going to assume it's curved, and you would get sort of a vertical line along a peak of that volume that needs these edge highlights. Sort of tie the shapes together. And again, we kind of need those darker shadows as well, a little bit.
So how do you do a dark shadow on yellow? Yeah.
Well, because yellow is such a bright color to begin with, a lot of times you don't want to bring the shadow quite down. You can't bring it down to black, but it already starts out really bright. So, you know, your darkest shadow might be something like this, and you want to like lay it in solid. Although I kind of like this one. It's kind of got a little bit of a purplish tone to it, but you also want to have these interior. And then because yellow's so weak, you can usually glaze a thin layer over top, and it will kind of unify the surface and get it all to tie together. So I can kind of show you a little bit what that's like in Photoshop by going in here. Let's say we use this yellow. It's kind of, yeah.
Yeah, I like that
Okay.
kind of bush kind of thing. So I think a lot of times people fall into a trap where they think that they can, to make a color darker, they just need to use a darker version of that color, but then you don't get as much of like that jump in value, right? It's just like light yellow to dark yellow.
Yeah, and I agree. And also with yellow, it can be too much if you push it too dark. Even with this rule that we've come up with, you know. So a lot of times it is more about that extra highlight.
Mm-hmm.
But the cool thing is, like, because it's so bright, whereas with red, you wouldn't want to necessarily put in like pure white highlights. You can do it with yellow. So we've gone to this layer, sort of icy yellow. We might go all the way to white. Start by like finding the center of this highlight that you already put in, and you know, put your highlight there on the edge. And then you know, you can kind of soften down through here a little bit. But notice how I'm not pulling that white all the way along this necessarily. It still needs to be sort of centered in there and make sense. And I probably would address this transition a little bit. Let's see. But it's okay for it to be sort of. And you also want to have it get like really bright saturated and then turn white.
Mhm.
And then you're using duration with a color like yellow than like the value scale. So you're kind of substituting, it is still getting darker in value, but you're substituting some of that for desaturation because you don't want to like, have it get too dark. Because if it gets too dark, you're like, it looks weird, right? Although you can maybe get away with it. It like with the desaturation thing, you can even like, have it range into one of the colors that are next to yellow. So this is kind of turning a little orangish, but we could leave it orange on the outside and then have it almost get like sort of olivine in the center. So you can have like the difference between the two sides of the leg. So that could look kind of cool as well. So anyway, I wanted to talk about the third aspect that you need to have in order to have your stuff look reflective, and that's what we call bounce or bounce light. And it's basically light that's bounced off the ground or some other close object and is then reflected in the shadow. Now this light is so weak that it will lose when it competes with any other light. Okay, so what that means is that bounce light doesn't really show up much in the highlight in the lit area. Now you can sometimes have like little reflections or little bars that are like, something like that. And that what that is like it's a bright object that's being reflected. So, there's exception to the rules, right? Whereas this is the actual light source because it's going up to white. So you can put like a little bit like that in there, but what this is more. So the way to think about it is that you've made these big areas of shadow, which normally you might be worried that it's like, oh, there's no information in there. People are gonna ask me like, what's going on? Well, we did that on purpose. We've got that extra contrast, and now we can come in here and we can pretend like there's a light coming from below, and we can bring these up with like a bounce light. Something like this maybe. It's hard to tell, what the shape of the model is. So I'm just kind of guessing here, but I think you guys get the idea. And see how it's like it's on the opposite side. So if you're doing edge, you would put edges on the bottom, not the top. And you might sort of blend this in like this. So notice how like when you do this, the darkest area is actually where the light terminates, and then it gets lighter again. Whereas like with a normal surface, it would just get dark, right? So that's something that's like really missing on this figure, and one of the things is keeping it from looking metallic. Is the inclusion of a bounce light. Right. So we can come in here, and remember there's all these plates and everything. All you need to do is just do the same technique that you did before, and only you're edge highlighting the bottoms of these edges, right? And then find the center, maybe give it a little bit of light like that. Right? And a lot of times I like to have the color tone be a little different. Mm-hmm. So it might be kind of colder, it might be like a desaturation rated version of the color or something like that. And then we can because that thing it's reflecting, it shouldn't look like the same as your primary light, right? not only with its power, but you can kind of get more interesting color play. It's kind of like here where it got sort of greenish or whatever. Might be sort of darkest here before it starts to. You could do something like this where, see, now it looks like it's bouncing, some maybe cold light in there. Or we could have that be our dark shadow. And we could use a different color in here. Let's say like kind of a beige or something like that. Right. Both of those would work. Yeah. So I think that we can kind of see how, like, that's starting to create the effect that we were looking for. And those are like sort of the 3 ingredients that you want to be aware of. And once you're aware of those ingredients, try to look for them in when you're observing things, not only in other paint jobs, but in real life as well. One of the teaching aids that I will use is I take a cylinder and I like spray it flat black, and then I tape it off and I spray one side like gloss black. And you can see that the highlights and shadows go in the same place, but one side has a bounce light, one doesn't, stuff like that. So you can observe it in real life is what I'm trying to say. So it can, and that I always encourage people to observe in real life so they can reinforce the teachings and everything.
Yeah,
go ahead, Anthony.
Yeah, I think like observing in real life, I think even just finding reference photos and then just doing some color picking and taking color samples of it can really help you observe like how the color shifts occur, where they occur, and why they occur, and partially reflecting some of the surroundings. So I think that like with your kind of like greenish tone in that gold makes it look so shiny, and because there's also that contrast with the warmer yellow and then the cold yellow in the highlights. It looks really cool.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that like you could really do a lot of cool stuff that way, and of course you can do more than this, but I just wanted to demonstrate those few techniques. Now, one thing that I would say about reference, since you brought it up, you have to be really careful with your non-metallic metal references, because I think that you can get a lot of cool Iron Man shots from the movie or whatever, but sometimes they're not useful. And it's the same thing with swords and armor and stuff like that, because when you're lighting something for a movie, they're either lighting it super dramatically or they're lighting it with a ton of different lights, a ton of light sources, right? Whereas and what that does is that you're going to have every light source is going to create like a line going through this. It's going to go, so if it's got like 8 studio lights, it's going to be super busy, and it's not going to be something that you can do on a model this size, right?
Right.
So you got to be really careful with that. And then, like, let's say you're looking at just suits of armor because you're painting a knight or something like that. A lot of the shots, when you Google that, it's going to be either product shots of like a product that you can buy because it's Google, and Google image search kind of sucks these days because they monetized it, right? But so product shots will come up, and of course when you're shooting something, some sort of product, you're going to have a ton of lights around it, and you're going to have the same problem. or it's going to be a shot from a museum. And of course, when you're lighting, a display case in a museum, there's going to be multiple lights as well, right? So if you were to use that as a reference, and your knight's supposed to be outside, like, fighting, it doesn't make sense. Like, it would look wrong, and it'd be really, really challenging to do. It'd be very busy and not focused. So, one of the tricks I used for, doing a night or something like that and studying metallics or reflective surfaces is you have to use the right search terms. Like I use historical reenactors, because they're actually out under the sky, and you will see the sky, and there'll be a single light source of the sun, and that makes it a lot simpler, right? You can see that there's like one light going through this. That's because that's the sun being reflected, right? It's much more simple. And then later on, you could be like, oh well, maybe there's a bright object over here, and we can pull that bright object through the whole piece, something like that. Now they have to match up, right? It has to make sense. You couldn't just like have a bright object here and then move it over here and then have one over here. Like you have to have it make sense. It's going to be reflected in all these surfaces because they're kind of all facing the same way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then if it's there, it also has to be on this one here because it has to be reflected in that. So there's a consistency thing too that we have to think about. But yeah, I just thought I'd mention that about references, and it can be really challenging to find references that are gonna. You can be led astray by references when you're trying to do that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So Matt, I've got a question.
Sure.
What your thoughts are on this? So one thing that bugs me is the highlight on the chest. If you notice, let me see if I can pull my mouse over here. So we got this really bright highlight right here. It's almost like we're both in Photoshop. But we've got this really bright highlight over here. And I get
this one.
That, with your light source coming down, that is the highest point of this chest. But I almost feel like the highlight would be better on this side for me. Also, you got the light, and he does keep it flowing down this side, but it's almost like, how would you approach that? Because like on the legs and stuff, you have very long, strong lighting on this side of the body.
Well, I would want light coming from. I think I would choose the same
okay with
side.
this side? Yeah.
Well, the reason is that he has this raised arm. So if the light is coming from this side,
you just need to
over here, it would actually be blocked. It would be blocked by the arm, and then also his head is turned this way. So if you have light coming from this side, it's actually a lot more challenging to highlight it because you're like shining light into a shadow of occlusion, like when two objects get close to each other, that creates a shadow, and it actually probably needs to be deeper on this, in here, for example.
Yeah, I think maybe the problem is
we could do the whole thing, and we have 15
more
minutes. Yeah.
Correctly.
But like the problem with this chest piece is, and he spent a lot of time on getting this in here, but it's missing sort of like some of the bounce lights. So like you would want to have a light from below over here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it might actually like get darker, sooner. It might actually be a bit more like that with and then he's missing a lot of the edge work. So you could take this something in the mid range, come in here and hit some of these edges. Now you don't want to like hit all of the edges, and when you're like, you don't want to necessarily do that, because now you have this edge and this edge both getting highlights, but like only one of them is going to be perpendicular to the light. So you might want to like, not do all of that. But it's like some of these like areas along. Now you might take this mid and then, use that as like a blend on the next face over. Sort of like this. and that's sort of like a reflection of the environment.
Mhm.
Only, the lit environment. So you're just missing some other aspects that needed to be in there. But I don't think it's necessarily bad. You can't really say. But the thing is, like, things also need to be more abrupt. So one thing I would say is that this highlights too big. So this is what we would call like a specular highlight, meaning that it's like a highlight of a point light source. So this would be like the sun, something really, really bright, and it would be like a reflection that's almost white. But that object is really small in our vision, so it's almost like the white. If when you're painting reflective objects, if your white highlight gets too big, it will not look correct, or it will look like that object that's reflecting is much bigger. And the sun is not that big in the sky. So, and even though this is being hit directly, the better thing to do would be to sort of have that be like a um, brighter red almost, and then have that reflection sort of. Let's see. It's hard. It can be a little hard to do red in Photoshop. So you might want to have it be a bit more like edges, and then use that mid-tone more to blend up towards it. So it's a little bit more like that. If it was striking, and you might instead of having it blend towards this corner like that, you might like have like kind of a specular light like that or something, because that's like the sun being reflected in like this flat surface, right? Might be something like that. Now, one thing to talk about edge lights. Let's say this shoulder piece. One mistake people make is that they'll put an edge on both sides of this. It'll be like there's an edge here and there's an edge here, right? And really, like, only one of these edges is going to be getting the direction of the light. So the light's coming in from the right. You want to have that only on the right hand side. And then this edge is defined by a shadow. That. Now you could have like a little bit of light as a bounce hitting this edge, but it would be down like here, and using like your bounce light or some less bright light. Something like that. Again, this is actually like kind of too broad. The white area is too broad. So we want to like actually make it tighter. So remember that second rule is that the transitions happen more abruptly, and that's more true about the specular highlight, not necessarily this mid-tone area where since you're reflecting like larger bright objects, that object might actually be much bigger than the sun is, right? So you could have like kind of more gradual transitions sort of hidden in here or something like that. But for the specular highlight, it needs to be like really sharp. Sometimes sound effects help. Yeah. So
Matt.
hopefully that, yeah.
So I had a question for you.
Sure.
Scott said, well, how did you choose a green hue on the yellow?
Well, it's kind of like we already had like orange on one side, so the other neighbor to to yellow would be green, so I kind of put that in there as a. But it could it's kind of like yellow has two neighbors, orange and green, so it's kind of like. But we do want to use a green that is like very desaturated. We couldn't put in like a green that was, more bluish. This would look too dark, too weird, right? So it's almost like, I mean, here in Photoshop, it's saying this is actually orange, but in reality, I would almost say it's like a olive green.
Mhm.
So yeah. So that's why I chose green. It's because like we have two neighbors, like if I were gonna have like this bounce light, I would want to have it be more purple, whereas like the highlight here, I would want to have it be more like, hot red. So
Yeah, it's cool.
right. So that's why. Anyway, I think that's probably like enough information. There's a lot more we could get into with like lighting direction and all that stuff. And I think that makes painting non-metallic metals or reflective surfaces make more sense. Like when you learn how to paint with lighting direction, it can make a lot more sense. And I do think that I can tell that Sean is going down that path and learning that. But I decided to like kind of really focus on just a set of rules or a set of instructions that could that teaches the sort of the core fundamentals of reflective surfaces. Yeah, but yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this Photoshop paint over and this little bit of instruction about reflective surfaces. Like I said, I kind of do these sorts of paint overs and use them to instruct my online coaching students on a nearly daily basis. I teach a lot of people, but I'm always open to new students. And so if anybody out there is interested in taking online coaching with me, you can visit the Miniature Monthly Patreon. You can sign up there, or you can just reach out to me directly, especially if you want to do more or less often than monthly coaching. You can reach out to me at contrastmini@gmail.com. That's my email, and you can just reach out to me and ask me about coaching. Yeah, I'm always taking new students, and I kind of meet everybody where they're at with their painting and teach them the next steps. So no matter where you're at with your painting, I can help you, So I don't just teach like super high level students. I teach people all different skill levels. Some are beginners, some are really advanced, and everywhere in between. And I help them reach their own personal goals, not whatever I think their goal is, So anyway, yeah, maybe I'll be talking to some of you in the future.
Sweet. All right. I don't remember how to move us back to the regular screen. So, hold on. Oh, okay. Well, maybe that helped a little bit. All right. All right. I don't want to remove Matt from the call. Change layout. That's what we need. Auto. Is it auto? I can't remember.
No, it's got like 2 halves.
Yeah. We've gotten rid of Anthony. That's the important part.
Oh no.
I don't know what it is.
Oh,
I think it's auto, but I think also I need to make Matt not pin. Oh, there we go. Unpin. There we go. And then they switch. It's awesome. Cool. Right on. Well, thank you everyone for the people that stuck around and watched all this. Also the people who watch it afterwards. Awesome. Hope you're enjoying it. And we definitely want to do, if you guys are interested in getting your stuff reviewed. I mean, obviously we can't review everyone because that would take forever. But I think it's a cool like it's cool just to see like Matt's take on it in him, or what Anthony thinks about whatever. It's really awesome, and if we can help some people out, that's awesome too. So cool. Alrighty. Well, I'm gonna I'll probably continue painting my guy in my off time. And I take it you guys were painting while I was doing that.
Yeah, the beast.
Oh yeah, the beast.
Not really yet.
Cool.
Ready to be shown, but.
Nice.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to say if Sean is watching this, if you'd like a copy of the paint over, just reach out to me and I'll send it to you. So
Oh
we can have
yeah,
that
great
reference.
idea. Great idea. Cool. All right. Well, we'll wrap it up, and we'll see you guys next month.
Cool.
All right. Thanks everybody.
Thanks
See you
a
later.
lot. We'll see you later.